So three things that are really lacking nowadays when it comes to dating are health, peace, and clarity. And those don't seem to mesh well with a lot of women nowadays. And a prime example of this, I was out, if you guys are familiar with the kind of Bellevue, Redmond area here in Washington State, Microsoft and big tech and a lot of money in that area. But I was driving down Bellevue Ave. It was a sunny day out on a weekend, so it was very busy. And there was a woman in the middle of a crowded sidewalk. I remember she had on a men's gold Rolex Daytona. If you guys know, you know, it's a very expensive watch. And she had with her a selfie stick that was a few feet in front of her as she was taking pictures of herself, with people having to now go around her like she's some kind of obstacle. Not having any care of the world for where those people had to be, for their responsibilities, their work life, their family life, thinking that she was the center of attention, the center of the universe, the main character, if you want to call it that. That it was so important for her to take these pictures with these people in the background, by the way, without, I would imagine, them being okay with being in the picture. And thinking that everything should now be based on what she wants and her attention and her validation. Now, I would assume these pictures were being posted on social media. But a prime example of what the issue that I have is not even just the existence of social media, but it's what's pushed on there. Like, I remember a while back, I happened to have been on my Instagram, and I came across a reel from a gentleman, and it was a picture of an elderly man. And the text above it said, "R.I.P. Dad," and it had no likes, no comments. I looked on his page out of curiosity. He had a picture of his dog. He had a picture of a book quote. Nothing on there that screamed, "I want to stand out." Nothing on there that screamed flashiness. "Look at me. I lack humility. I'm arrogant." Nothing at all that screamed they're wanting attention. Had no likes, had no comments. I guarantee you that gentleman posting those pictures on there had more peace of mind than that woman in the middle of the sidewalk with her selfie stick. Because she's dependent on people, mostly from other men, quite frankly, their attention and validation for her own well-being. So, with that woman being there, with her selfie stick, gold Rolex on, Gucci shades or whatever she had on with a Jamba Juice in her hand, the whole world could be unraveling around her, chaos around her. She wouldn't have a care in the world. That's exactly the problem nowadays, and why a lot of men do not want to date, because there is no understanding of what is conducive for a healthy relationship. And I'm going to make my point with this. They've tried for a while to tell men that they're missing out for not wanting to date women in today's dating market. And what it reminds me of is when I was younger, I remember 21, 22, 23, that whole fear of missing out thing, in particular when it came to nightlife stuff. And I remember I was at a point where I thought that there was something wrong with me because I did not want to engage in those kinds of things. What I came to find out is that they're empty, that I wasn't missing out at all. And it's the same thing here. Not dating a woman like that. You're not missing out on anything. You're quite frankly guarding your peace of mind. You're quite frankly guarding your solitude. And I find it funny too, because a lot of women like that, they'll say, "Where are the good men at?" And however many years time when they can't get the attention and validation they want anymore. They'll say, "Where are the good men at?" and being single. The reality is, good men are repulsed by that kind of behavior. Like, for example, I've seen women that'll post bikini pictures on their Instagram, their accounts on private, and they want to act like they're some good woman. Meanwhile, they don't value exclusivity. They know what they're doing. They're looking for attention and validation. Why would any good, decent man take you seriously? And a lot of the time, too, I see with the hypergamy stuff, it's not even that. They probably had many good men who wanted to take them on dates, but because they didn't meet some kind of requirement that they had, they reject them, or they always think they can do better. They always think that the grass is greener. And that's, again, the problem, too, with now what social media has kind of created, right? There's that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And this is a prime example where there's always going to be some next best thing. And I've, not to go into kind of a side kind of tangent here, but I've seen it really cause issues with the whole thing with self-improvement. Because my idea of self-improvement which is a big part of this channel, is not comparing yourself to other people, but comparing yourself to who you were the day before, the week before, even the month before. Now with social media, you have the woman on there and they scroll and they see, oh, well, look at this girl. Well, she's on a yacht. Why can't I be this? Why can't I be that? Well, my man's this and that. And even the height stuff, which again, I like to think that's just dating app nonsense, but I'll touch on it anyway. Even the height stuff. Women who are 5'1", 5'2", 5'3", saying they need a man who's 6 foot or above 6 foot. I don't even think half these women would even be able to tell the difference between 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot. I really don't. There's no reason that a woman who is that height would even need a guy who's that much taller than them. But again, like I mentioned, it is for the image. It's not about the relationship. It's not about love. It's not about the peace and clarity or any of that. It's about selfishness. It's about the image. And that's the problem. I think a lot of us are looking for a time where things were, I would say, objectively better. It's not just us getting older, because I know a lot of people will say that, it's just nostalgia, it's just getting older. There was a time before a lot of this chaos. Now, yes, things weren't perfect, but the way I see now with the way women behave is it's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I'll be upfront with this, right? And I've talked about this. I think the battle of lust is a battle that a lot of men will face. One of the biggest battles perhaps a lot of men will face at some point in their life. I talked about in previous videos with divorce and stuff like that of friends of mine who they overlooked red flags, and unfortunately it backfired. But I was having a conversation with someone I know at the gym who he's around the age of 30 and he's going to raves. And I told him, I said, dude, at your age you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. I said, you're going to get older here and there. There's going to come a point where you're going to look back and think you wasted a lot of time. He has no problem getting women, female attention. But again, he has a problem with lust, and he knows that deep down. But he made an interesting point. He said, man, I would love to get a woman and be loyal to one woman. But they're just not women that are worth taking seriously that I see nowadays. And we had this conversation a number of months ago, but it kind of clicked to me. Because again, I'm not justifying hooking up or anything like that. Like I said, lust is something that a lot of men have struggled with. But he's got a point. He's got a point. He's not wrong. Does that justify that? No. But he is not wrong. Like I remember when I used to use the dating apps, and this was a point in my life where I did have that problem when I was in my very early 20s. Some of these dates I would go on were the most surface level things that I've ever witnessed. Like there was a girl I remember we were talking, and in the middle of when we're talking, she pulls out her phone and starts scrolling mid-conversation, which not only is disrespect. Look, I'd understand if it was some important phone call from a family member or something like that, but just on your phone scrolling mid-conversation, it's extremely disrespectful. Again, I think we all remember at a time where we'd be at the dinner table and there wasn't someone pulling out their phone every few seconds, or someone's phone face up or face down at the table. I think we all remember that time, quite frankly. But again, it's absolutely ridiculous. People being treated like they're not people. But my point being is that, to get back on, I guess, track, I don't know if I went too off topic, but the whole thing with modern women, to me, is more of a mindset than it even is an age kind of bracket. Because a lot of people, they talk about the Gen Z and millennial women would have these kind of conversations. But I've even seen older women who fall into this kind of category. And I don't want to date any woman that has that kind of mindset. I don't. There's nothing attractive about it. There's nothing feminine about it. There's something that screams that you're even worth taking seriously about it. And again, a big problem I see too, which is a lot of what women are seeing on there and what is being pushed on there, is the lousy kind of behavior. Is women being told that if you're acting in your really feminine nature, that it's a sign of weakness. That even I've seen even saying being a wife and being a mother is a sign of weakness. And like I've said in previous videos, I made a point that kids ideally should have and really need their father and mother in the household. Ideally, their biological father and mother. And you have women now thinking that that is somehow a downgrade or settling, or there is something wrong with that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And even I have to question the mindset that some of these women are in, because I made a video a few days ago about a friend of mine who went through a very rough custody battle where he lost custody of his daughter. False allegations made against him. And I saw some women under that video commenting, saying that you need to know both sides of the story, that he was probably had a substance problem, and he was probably abusive and this, that. Jumping to these conclusions. When I've known this man for years, and as I mentioned, he had no criminal record, a good man, decent man, didn't have any substance problem. And you have women really who their minds are that just out of the ordinary. They're not thinking in reality to even make a statement like that. And that's a problem. I see a lot of this kind of behavior being enabled by other women. So what they're seeing now on the social media is not to act in their feminine nature, not to act with decency or clarity or peace or well-being. It's just outright chaos. It's just outright chaos. Like I mentioned in the story, not to rehash a previous video, but she did all that out of spite against the man, and she got away with it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't see any circumstance where someone in their right mind would think that is acceptable. And I'll tell you what, something else too with the social media stuff. Because there are things that, of course, some men need to do better. Like stop giving the validation and attention that they so crave. Stop treating women like they're the prize. When I see, like I would assume this girl in the beginning, like I mentioned, taking that picture, and I see stuff like that. And I see a lot of men that are commenting, putting heart emojis and stuff like that, trying to earn their attention, trying to earn their love or whatever. That's something men need to stop doing too. Don't defend this kind of behavior, because that's part of the problem. Now, I don't see a lot of men doing that, but even the few I see, me as you know, I'm going to tell men to step it up if I see them doing that kind of stuff. If I know in my personal life or whatever. And with the social media, like I've even seen men I know who will follow a girl, and will, you know, the girl's not following him back. And I'm like, bro, why are you following this girl? Why are you sitting here following this girl, liking her photos, commenting on her photos? Like I've said in a previous video a while back, I remember, if someone, which again, this is my problem, is you meet people nowadays and it's like, oh, let's connect on Instagram. It's like they don't want to give you their phone number anymore. It's always let's connect on Instagram or this, that. Number one, I'm not going to take the interaction that seriously if that's where someone wants to go. And the other thing too is if I follow you and you don't follow me back, instant unfollow, instant, okay, I'm not playing this game. Because I'm not going to treat you like you're some sort of celebrity, like you're above me, like you're the center of the universe. That's not going to happen. So when I've seen people I know who will follow women on social media and they're not following back, I tell them straight up, like, dude, what are you doing? Unfollow them. They don't care. Why are you giving them this disproportionate praise and attention and validation? And, you know, I think that's what ultimately people miss about this stuff is when people were treated like a person and not some sort of piece of validation. Because that's what I see a lot of the time now. That's what I see a lot of the time now. And it's just caused absolute chaos. Between the dating apps, between the social media, you have women's egos out of control. You have some men who need to stop doing that, stop giving him the attention and validation. And then you have women who are just not living in reality and thinking they're the center of the universe. Why would any man want to date that? And you know, the thing is too, when people talk about finding a good woman, because I've had these conversations as well, people talk about meeting organically in public, and which I'm all for that, not using dating apps. But here's the problem. You got to make sure that girl is not on a dating app. Because there's been times in my life where I've seen this personally, where a guy will meet a girl in person and she will still be on the dating apps because she's not so-called serious yet with the guy. It's like, meanwhile, you're talking to him daily over text. You're talking to him over the phone. You're hanging out with him a few times a week. Yet you're still exploring your options because you're not serious yet. So it's like, what does that even mean? There is no commitment or loyalty. If you're talking to a man regularly, if you're talking to this dude and you're hanging out with him and you're on the phone with him, and you're saying that's not serious commitment, then there is no loyalty to begin with. Then that's a complete waste of time. An absolute waste of time. So even if you're going to meet a girl organically, you got to make sure she doesn't have these dating apps or social media. Or you got to make sure, and you got to make sure that she's not going to places like bars and raves on the weekends. Because I've seen a lot of that too. I've talked about it previously. When I used to be in university, when I was in college, I would come across women who were seemingly good women, right? But they're doing all that kind of stuff on the weekend. Just like the women on the dating apps. They probably are those same women on the dating apps. When I was younger using the dating apps, they always had the college they were in under their bio. It's become where it's almost like no different. This mindset has just become really all over the place, guys. But as always, I appreciate you viewing the video. Just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on social media, dating apps, and just this whole thing. But as always, guys, thank you. Hope you guys have a good one. Appreciate it.